Hey, Bernard.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's see if I can get. That's better. Get this laptop to sit the way I want. This thing's got the camera all the way at the bottom, so it's a little.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. That's a little. Yeah, that's a little bit better. How are you today?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. I'm waking up. Fortunately, hey Howard. Fortunately, Howard called me and said, "Oh, the password's wrong."
Uh-oh.
So we got
Oh.
it straightened out. So it worked for you. So this is very good.
Yeah, I just clicked the link, that's all.
Yeah. Well,
I
apparently,
didn't use any passwords and
yeah. Apparently, I set up another meeting after this one with Zoom. I don't know if you're a Zoom user, but I changed the password for the other meeting. You just, because this one's DIY audio, I just changed the other one to like whatever it was, investing. And it changed this meeting's password at the same time, and I didn't realize
oh
it.
my gosh, it's terrible.
Just awful. So
Really?
fortunately, Howard got on early and it didn't work, so I managed to get it fixed, so it's working. So this
Good, good.
we're smooth sailing. So
Good, excellent.
yeah. Well, we got everybody we need.
Yeah. I sent Terry a link, so he's going to be on, he said, and Siddharth also is going to be on. So
Yeah.
let's see.
Well, I guess since we have a small audience, I'll talk about non-audio things for a minute.
Hey,
So
what's that?
Oh, there we go.
Rainforest. Oh, that's the unit from PSC.
Yeah, and so sure enough, I haven't tried it yet today, but so far there's been no joy.
Right.
But yeah, it runs on a little couple of AAA batteries, and then it also has a little power adapter, but it'll wake up here.
Oh,
Maybe it'll wake up. Gonna wake up. Oh, there it goes.
okay. Yeah.
So it wakes up, and then it just says searching for meter. And
okay.
that is all it ever does.
Wow, it never finds the meter.
So
Yikes.
I don't know. It would be great if it would, if it would go ahead and find the meter right now, and it proved me wrong.
Right. Yeah, that would be nice.
But
well, I'm in the dark. What kind of meters?
oh yeah, sorry, Howard. So Renan hooked up a meter device to his power panel, and so he found one that like clamped little coils around the power wires in his breaker box.
Oh, okay, right.
And so there's a few of these that are available, Amazon's got them, and yeah, anyway, they're really nice. But then he also found this one that supposedly just talks wirelessly to your existing meter. And so the idea is, these new meters, when they read them wirelessly from the road, so they just drive through your neighborhood and connect with its Zigbee, I think. It's like Bluetooth or something. And so the power company the PSE has this on their website, so you can just buy the little box, and then it's got the little address of this box on here, and then you can power company supposedly then tells your meter what the MAC address is of this box, so it will talk to it.
And then what kind of information do you get from it that you can use? How to use it? What do you use it for?
Well, if it worked, it would just graph the power use all day, in real time, and then let you know, you could go watch his devices turn on and off. Hey, Animal.
Hello, can you
Welcome.
hear me?
This is what it shows, Howard. At least from the one from Amazon, the Sense app, it shows you in real time your power consumption.
Is that the last 12 hours for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's by minute. It's
Okay.
in real time. It's showing the power being consumed. And then it also shows you which devices are consuming how much power. You know,
Oh,
so you can watch things turn on and off and see how much power they consume. Like your heating system or whatever, or your refrigerator or your air conditioner, that sort of thing. I got this because I was getting very large readings on my bill from Puget Sound. I was getting enormous readings and paying a fantastic amount of money lately since October, and I thought this is very unusual. I want to monitor this power consumption myself and see what's causing it. And this little device, $100, I think, 130 or something on Amazon, helped me to track it down finally. And it was the pump that drives the water in the pool, circulates the water in the pool. It's an old pump that runs 9 amps at 240 volts. That's almost 2 kilowatts every moment that it's on. And I had it running 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
it's about like a two horsepower motor, something like that.
Something like that. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
3.
3.
Yeah.
So it was craziness. Anyway, that helped me to figure it out. And now I've got a new motor being put in that's 1/3 of that rating.
Oh, okay.
It should bring I've already brought the bill down by cutting down the number of hours I'm running that pump. So this month's bill was half the price
Wow.
of the previous month's bill.
Hey, Renan,
Yeah.
would you like to know an audio application of this device?
What application? How? Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, I use them to design the right size of the power supplies for active speakers, because one thing that is often misunderstood in audio is the high ratio between the peak power and RMS power.
Oh.
So if you connect this to suppose your amplifier,
Yeah.
and you will see that your amplifier is 300 watts per channel. You are listening very loud in your listening room, but the power consumption is maybe 50 watts, 100 watts.
I see.
And yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because that will give you an idea of the required size of the power transformer and the heat sinks. The thing that I learned from this is to design for a high transient power, but low RMS values.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an application. I use the same device. Yeah.
Oh, you use is yours called Sense? The one I'm using is called Sense.
Sadly, mine got broken and I throw away.
Oh, okay.
And now a friend gave me one when Mackie closed. He gave me one that it was using in Mackie. He got the box full of them. That it's a power meter from the line, and but it's the use that you were describing. Yeah.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So how have you been? You haven't been coming to our regular meetings. You just COVID, staying home, or busy, or
too busy, sadly.
Too busy. Okay.
You know that I'm still working, and Microsoft takes a lot of time, and
yeah,
and whenever I have a little bit of time, I have a lot of things. I live in an old house, and there is always something to do. So no free time. Anyway, in December, November, December, I was able to finish the project that I have for a long time. I made a clone of the monitors, the BBC LS3-5.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying them a lot.
Wow, nice.
I have original Keff speakers from the
No,
80s.
We started the meeting.
So
Okay.
I measure the
Fine.
speakers and I adapt the crossovers
yeah,
to
right.
my old speakers, and I got good results.
Oh, that's nice.
So far I did it passive. And
What
Yeah.
speakers are you using?
the original, the KEF T27
KEF.
and
Oh,
KEF
wow.
B110.
Nice, very nice.
Let me see. I don't know if I can keep on connecting, and let me do an experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you still there? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to see how I switch the camera with this. Just a second. Come on.
Hey, Siddharth, the DIY meeting has started.
Oh,
Hope
this
to
is
see
not
you.
working.
Bye.
Oops, let me see. I'm sorry, not familiar with this.
Yeah, it's
It
okay.
looks it's not working. Oh yeah. Can you see the speakers or no? Nope.
No.
The picture froze.
I'm afraid that Zoom took control of my.
Does Zoom have a control that would let you switch it? Maybe not.
Be right back.
Okay. Shoot. Integrated camera. So on the Zoom, there is I only have one camera on this device, so I don't know if it'll let me switch.
Okay.
But there is there's a button that says stop video that has a menu.
Yeah, I check it and I choose the other camera, but it didn't work. I don't know if this machine or not, but I was willing to show just to show the speakers, but it will not work. Okay, I will leave for another opportunity.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that because of that lack of time that I mentioned, although it's not too much DIY, but I purchased the speakers assembled from a guy in Moldova or something like that. He was advertising in
the
eBay.
cabinet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I have 5 pairs of those in my closet.
You also are planning to make a LS35?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll hold it up. Things will crash as I pull on this wire, but that's okay. Little destruction. There we go. So here's So these are from the same cabinet guy in Moldova. But I've fitted different drivers. So I built these, oh man, it's already been a year and a half or two. But this is a SB ceramic coated aluminum woofer. And then the, what is that? Gosh, is that the Suez? I think it's either a ScanSpeak. I can't remember which. Anyway, one of the two Scandinavian dome tweeters that's in there.
Wow.
And,
yeah. It looks like bigger than 1 inch, the dome.
I think it's a 1-inch dome. It's just kind of they advertise it as a 1-inch. And then it has this waveguide that it comes in. It's a popular tweeter. It's been out for a number of years. I can't remember the number of it, but yeah. So that was one of my. I also used some other tweeters from Visiton.
Oh, my camera is off. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can disconnect this. Although the back camera does not work, I will try to.
Hey, Terry? Are you there, Terry?
Yeah.
Looks like your camera, I don't know what it's pointing at, but it's.
No, I haven't adjusted yet.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm just finishing my soup and I don't want you guys to see my sloppy manners.
Okay.
Oh, look at that.
I end up wearing about half of it, I think, but
Oh, that's the KEF driver.
Nice.
Yes,
Very nice.
I have it for, I think that there are 40 years.
Wow.
So I measure because I have experience that some of them, they drift the specs over time. And I
Oh.
did a passive, a little bit different than the original, but I match the advertised response of the speakers
Yeah.
because that was my goal.
How does it sound? How do you-
Fantastic.
That's great. Wow.
You know, this is something that I was doing a lot of experiments and I purchased several mini speakers that I modify. We always talk about the primary specs like frequency response, distortion, and even dispersion. But this has a stereo image. The things are floating in the air.
Wow.
So they sound very natural, but the presentation of the sound stage is fantastic.
Wow.
That I like a lot. I should
Excellent.
have done this before. Let me put them back on the shelf.
Yeah. Thank you for showing
Yeah,
us. That's nice.
wonderful.
Wow.
So those can't be used as sort of desktop speakers, can they? They seem a
Yeah.
little bit.
Oh,
they
sure. Well, I got them sitting on my desk next to my monitor. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're so whatever. What
Yeah.
are they? Are they 12 inches high and
Okay.
6 inches wide? Something. They're
Yeah,
relatively
pretty
small.
small. They were developed by the BBC in 1977 for their mobile recording studios. They are mini vans that they use for do on-site recordings.
Lovely. Wow.
So they did a lot of study of how to make the smallest monitor that will satisfy the requirement for high quality monitoring.
Mm.
And you know, you have a pretty good Harvard speakers. Harvard manufacture a version of the LS35.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. Oh,
Yeah, this is the crossover board I made for mine.
Wow.
yeah.
So
Wow.
it's lots of it's heavy.
Yeah, and everything air core. This is one of the change that I also made because the original crossover they use steel core inductors and I don't like them.
Yeah. But
And those are the original KEF drivers. So they're many years old. Is that right?
Yes. I have a bunch of them still, even the B139, the elliptical woofer. I hope that I can use.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Does somebody sell the driver packages for kind of equivalent of the original now? Can you go on Meniscus or somewhere and get?
Yes. Yes.
That is-
In England, Falcon
yeah,
Falcon.
sells all the kits, all the parts. I think that the KEF, the drivers are not there anymore, but they did clones of everything.
Yeah.
Falcon Acoustics, yeah.
I'll have a look at that. Yeah.
Oh,
Essentially, I when Dana was building his, I built a the original kind of utility cabinet he was experimenting with, and I just kind of cut out the pieces, and I still have a set of pieces cut out for that size of cabinet.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
They're sitting in a box, so they're not joined or anything, but yeah, so I don't know if I need I've got some other speakers that I've built that need to be so shall we say updated.
But you're an open loop baffle guy, open baffle guy.
Oh, I do that too. Yeah, I guess I've just finished the final built pair. Oh, yep, yeah, there's one of the, yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, what's that?
Those are the
That's-
cabinet Howard built, and he's got parts for a second one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I should give this back to you, Howard, if you want to put speakers in, since you've got the other one, you could build them into a pair.
No, well, I think I've got a pair cut out,
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
and then I'd probably make the front a little prettier.
Sure. Yeah.
But
But yeah, that
Um,
was, yeah, for prototyping. Yeah.
Nice.
I can share here the ones that I'm calling the surfboards. I've just built my finished pair. I had a prototype where I was working on for the last couple of years. Changed almost everything about them, and I haven't installed the drivers, but I have the wooden part here. I can show everyone.
Don't
You
try
hear
to don't try to do surf today. There is a tsunami alarm.
I know. I know. Let's see. It might help. How could I end up on the big screen? Just,
Oh, you are. I mean, whoever talks gets highlighted, but that's
Okay.
your view that you're looking at. I mean, you can pick speaker. If you go into view on the upper right corner, there's a view button. And then it says speaker is one of them, and that then makes the speaker the big view and everybody else little.
okay.
But that's
So,
just
okay.
how it's presented to you. Yeah.
I think, I mean, I know about what this is showing from, if I stand back and show you, I really won't be able to see what I'm doing, but I think you will be able to see it. So, so this is the pair here,
right, we can see it.
and they are open baffle, but with one of the drivers is in a U frame down here because it's open on the backside. There's no drivers in these right now, and the driver complement is going to be mostly vintage. It's JBL 123A down here, which is the driver used in the L100 speaker. Has a pretty high Q, and actually pretty low FS, pretty low resonant frequency of like, I can't remember, maybe 25 hertz or something like that. And then this one is a Bozak 199, which has a resonance up around 45 hertz, something like that. So it doesn't go as deep, but it has more sensitivity and a very warm, a little slightly forward friendly sound. The 8-inch that's going to go in here be a JBL D208, or it's marked as a D216, but I think it's been reconed to 8 ohms. This is ScanSpeak that was built for Ariel. The brand of speakers called Ariel. It's a 4 ohm, 4.5 inch mid range, and then a small neo magnet, inexpensive peerless tweeter that does really well. Gets really high ratings, but it's like a $15 tweeter, and then another one of those on the back, radiating backwards, because the tweeter is the only driver that doesn't have rear radiation. It's not open to the rear. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but I did add a constrained layer of mass-loaded vinyl between these two halves. These two halves screw together, so this whole thing will come apart. In fact, you have to take it apart in order to install the drivers, and the drivers don't have any screws into the wood. They're all isolated with foam and different materials, foam and felt and stuff like that on either side. And part of the idea behind, there were different reasons why that all happened. I mean, the way it all happened like this, none of the driver flanges show in this. And that ends up affecting the aesthetics and was point of design with these actually, because the drivers are all just these different vintages, and they're made, a couple of them are made just for rear, well, 3 of them are made just for rear mounting. No, actually these 2. I can't remember the JBL. I think the JBL is actually a kind of older style frame also. I mean, the 12-inch JBL is that way too. And so they all look different from the front regardless, even if they looked okay, which they don't really from the front. So I wanted to hide the fronts of all of them. So they all have these kind of like waveguide looking things on them. On the base, I don't think it really makes much difference at all. This driver, it probably still doesn't, because this driver starts to roll off from about 300 hertz at maybe 60 dB per octave. Probably affects this little bit of a waveguide. Probably it's only 3/8 of an inch deep, but it probably affects the mid range a little bit. But also the drivers are all set. I massaged design and worked with it, whatever, so that all the voice coils would be in line, so that I could approximate time alignment. And then when I use them, it'll probably tilt back at it, maybe 10-degree angle or 15-degree angle, something like that. And that, from a listening position, should have them all fairly well aligned. Just have to experiment with that. It's probably going to be at its best being bi-amped, having the two woofers on the bottom have a separate amplifier, and then having one amplifier up here. This section should be pretty sensitive, limited mostly by this driver, which is 92 dB at 4 ohms, and it's a 4 ohm driver. But there'll be, yeah, so the upper section may be close to 92 dB. Plus, being open baffle, it's radiating out the front and the back in the mid-range. This driver innately is, the JBL that goes in here is innately around 97 dB or something like that, sensitive. So it'll basically be operating below the baffle step. So there won't have to be any baffle step correction up here. So this can operate full open without any resistive, or without having any resistors in line or L pads on it. Hopefully, might have to massage it a little bit one way or another. But so this section up here should be kind of in the area of 92 dB sensitive. So I could probably run, I've got a single-ended SET kind of amp. So if it sounds good with this, that might end up being powering this part up here. And then the lower part, I think I'll just put I think I'll try and make just a passive crossover, but a separate amplifier for it. And then just have separate volume controls and adjust the balance that way. So yeah. And the wood is fir, and it's actually like a number 1 or number 2 construction grade wood that I carefully picked the pieces and then cut around the knots, and then oriented the grains. So basically, like, these panels are kind of book matched. They're the same on both sides. This one not exactly, but you know, so a lot of screwing around went into this thing to get it to be.
How did you do the bent part of the U frame, that you have a round around the woofer? Yeah.
Okay, so I made a bending form. It could be done, you could do it without a separate bending form. I did make a bending form that's just a separate jig that looks like kind of looks like a covered wagon, like a gypsy wagon without not a gypsy wagon. Gypsy wagons probably are wood with a roof, but like a covered wagon, like a Conestoga wagon that the pioneers here used, but without the canvas. So it's like ribs. But you can also do a bend like this, just cutting out a plywood section here and then having another plywood section on this end and bending around that. But the way I did this is I bent this part first and then attached it to this other part. But at any rate, it's these laminations, all but the outside lamination are, I think it's 5.2 millimeter plywood that's 3-ply. And the outer plies tend to be pretty thin and the inner ply goes cross grain. So if you remove if you sand off the outer ply on one side of a piece of wood like that, it bends really easily. And so there's 3 layers of that. And then this outer layer is actually at some point I had bandsawed a piece of 8-inch wide fir wood, which wasn't construction grade. It was sold as clear vertical grain fir. But I had bandsawed it down to like, you know, from whatever it was. And then this piece that was 1/8 inch thick or so was left over. And I have
Howard?
Yeah.
When you're playing those speakers, aren't you ever kind of in fear that all of a sudden, like a mouse trap, they're gonna go off?
Nope. Nope. And not actually.
Okay, you're a brave man. Good.
I think, you know, that yellow glue is pretty good. So then the outside is, the veneer on the outside is basically, it's a really thick veneer. It's like, you know, 16th plus or something like that. But it started out as solid wood, and I basically steamed it. Actually got it steamed with a steam iron, poured water on it, ran a steam iron over it, and then bent it around the form and let that set up. And then I was able to glue it later. So a lot of labor in this.
Yeah, I've had to do that with boats before.
Yeah. Yeah, I know boats have a lot of that in it. But so yeah, so that's it. Does that does that make sense about as far as how the bending works?
Yeah,
Interesting. Yep.
perfect.
Okay, yeah. Another way to bend something like this is if you took a piece of 3/4 inch like hardwood plywood, and then you use like a sliding compound saw or even a radial arm saw and make multiple saw curves right next to each other. But then this part ends up looking sloppy on the inside. It ends up having all these saw curves in it, but you can do that. So I've done a lot of these shapes for a staircase starting steps. That's where I basically got used to bending things like that, was for the curved in starting steps on stairs.
So Howard, you said you used several layers to make that total thickness. How many layers was it?
There was 3 layers of the 5.2 millimeter
Okay.
ply, and it was just cheap underlayment.
Right. Did you use glue? Did you use glue in between each layer then?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I did all the sanding stuff so they would, and tried each one around the form, make sure they would bend.
Right.
And then laid them out and put glue between the layers. So basically 3 layers of wood, 2 layers of glue, right? Because you don't want glue on the outside.
Right. Yeah.
And then bent that, got that, and then put the final veneer piece over the outside of that.
Right.
And regular veneer would work too. I just happened to have this piece that had come off the bandsaw at some point that I had saved. And it has a look that's a whole lot like the rest of it in terms of I think it's second growth. It's vertical grain, but it's not really super old growth. And so it looks similar to the second growth framing lumber that I used for this. Yeah.
It looks real nice.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're
Yes.
really hard on it.
Yes, it's artisan work. Yeah.
No, it was a lot of hours. It really was a lot, but the design didn't happen. It happened organically over a long period of time too, just working out all that, especially all the details about how all the drivers needed to go in order to be lined up and to have the flare come off at the right point where, say, the surround meets the cone, all that kind of stuff. It just was a lot of messing around and was hard to keep straight mentally. I had to have the prototype like right in front of me. And even then I got confused. It was like, and then there's the different layers fit together. So all the holes have to line up exactly. And I had a few different versions of templates and stuff that I had made, and I had to keep referencing one to the other in order to not screw something up. It was, yeah, it's a lot, but you know, so I spent my life like building nice things for other people and never had time to build stuff, you know, for myself. But so now I'm doing that.
You know, my next project is in speakers is an open baffle. So that's why I was asking so much. I had the speakers for over 2 years.
Yeah.
They are waiting. But I have a crazy idea that is a little bit different of what you did. I thought this, maybe I can have your input. I imagine that when you play an instrument that has rich harmonic content and you do a multi-way speakers, part of the sound comes from one driver, part goes to the other, and so on. Maybe 2, 3 drivers. So we all can detect if the cone is paper, if it's plastic, or if it's aluminum. So if the sound of a single instrument will be reproduced by more than one driver, my target was to use cones that has the same material.
Yeah.
So I purchased a set of aluminum drivers from Hy-Vee, low cost, of course, but I have 8-inch, 6-inch, 4 inches, 2 and 1 inches, and I want to combine this idea of have all the drivers with the same type of cone, plus other thing that I want to try that has been on my mind for a long time is the concept of the face filler from Bang & Olufsen, that when you make a speaker that reproduce, let's say, low and the other high, they put a driver in the middle that reproduce the difference between the two.
It's part of the crossover design, right?
Yes, and this is supposed to give you a perfect square wave reproduction.
I've read about that. Yeah, yeah.
So I have this next on my whenever I have time, but it's interesting. And the other attractive thing of the open baffles, and that's probably something that you are well aware of, is that the lack of resonance, and they are boxless, so they sound so great.
Yeah. That articles that I've read about the type of crossover design you're talking about, and that it's I think they use the terminology that the driver in the middle is a filler driver, F-I-L-L-E-R, filler driver.
Yes.
My stuff has tended to end up, even with the box speakers, has tended to end up in essence doing that same thing, but not with those same phase relationships. My crossovers are more just kind of low order parallel crossovers. Well, and sometimes, you know, I mean, if I end up with a second order crossover, then sometimes they're inverted type of thing. But so I don't strictly do that, but the filler driver thing, especially since I tend to use more drivers, that ends up happening anyway because there's a whole lot of overlap, and then and so you could have a less sensitive mid-range, say. Well, a couple of things I would say about the open baffle thing that I've discovered, and maybe Dave could say what he's discovered. Also, is that like you said that I think you said that it's hard to get enough bass. And like even these ones I've showed with the 212s, if they have a separate amplifier and you don't play them too loud, then they don't need another bass speaker. But basically I'm figuring using some type of a subwoofer, probably an open baffle one, but maybe before I get around building that, maybe just my other my other subs. So there's that. And then the other thing is that basically just the mid-range. I was going to specify what, but basically the whole mid-range, especially once you get up like above 500 hertz for some reason, tends to be, maybe because of baffle step partly or something, I'm not sure, but it tends to be way louder. Like if you just took the same drivers and the same crossover and put them in an open baffle, the mid-range would be like 10 dB louder than the rest of it, or maybe 6 dB or something. I think it's because you got the mid-range coming off the back. It's not getting attenuated by the air as much as the super high frequencies do, and it's not canceling like the bass does. So the mid-range is like really pronounced. So you're kind of fighting that the whole time. That ends up being like the equivalent of baffle step compensation for somehow, compensating for that. And then of course the bass frequencies fall off real quickly. And you pretty much just need conary and excursion and equalization of some sort to compensate for that. If you don't get you said your biggest speaker, Annabelle, is an 8?
Yeah, but
I think
for the low, I want to try few things that are slightly different. One is I want to cover the full range of the voice with just one speaker. So my plan is to do, let's say, 300 hertz to 3K.
Yeah.
With the 4 inches that I got. And then 3K up with the dome and 300 down with an 8 inches. And it's all Dapolito. And also I'm doing the face fillers with a symmetrical array. And I have some drawings, but the difference is that I'm not sure yet of the shape, because you like symmetrical shape, but that symmetrical shape will give you a step response. The diffraction is the same in both sides, so you have a bigger step. In the past, I have good results doing the front of the baffle that looks like a triangle. So you align the drivers to one side and the other is non-symmetrical, so the transition is not so abrupt.
Yeah. But I would think that if you tried to go down to 300 with the 4-inch, that you're going to end up having to basically attenuate the from say 300 up, you're going to have to roll off that 4-inch driver an awful lot in order to get it to sound flat, all things considered.
Yeah, this is a project that didn't start. I only checked the sensitivity of the drivers. I purchased the drivers. I have them in the store behind me, and was not sure of the fine numbers. More than that, this is something that a good finding on Craigslist. I purchased an amplifier with 12 channels.
Oh yeah.
For $150.
Oh, sweet.
It's with LM3886, this IC that is so common. So it has 12 channels of 60 watts. And I was planning to use that to drive each band so I can adjust I care a little bit. I am not caring about efficiency because with an active system I can adapt. In fact, when I met Dana for first time, I was looking for a DSP multi-channel, and then a friend of mine gave me one that I have here. Is QSC 8-channel DSP, so I can drive each channel to one amplifier. And then to one driver. So I can adjust phase, delay, the slope of the filter, and also, of course, the amplitude there. So no problem with efficiency, with nothing. So
Oh, right, yeah, nice.
so
Yeah.
that's before you. Be, my first project was the passive that I just finished, the LS35. Now the next one will be that open baffle with these multiple speakers. I want to try what happened with you have all the same material in all the cones. For that idea that I said before. But it's just an idea, of course. It's something to try.
I would add one thing Howard mentioned about attenuating a mid-range. When you do have a mid-range that's a little more efficient than the others, don't be afraid of putting resistors in line with the mid-range. It's all about getting the right balance, and you can attenuate it too far, of course, but if you can still have a resistor in line with the mid-range. I try to avoid it on a woofer, but on the mid-range and the tweeter, it's okay to attenuate. Yeah, just add a resistor in there, and if you have simulation software, it'll help you dial it in right away. But it's not a sin to do that.
It looks like Terry wants to show us something.
Yeah,
What have you got, Terry?
well,
Wow, look at this thing.
whoa,
CBT.
you guys are talking
CBT,
about having
constant bandwidth array.
inline speakers. And this one here is a focused array. I built these about 25 years ago.
We can't see the
And
front of it.
the focus on these, they're about an inch, a little bit less than an inch and a half, I suppose, the drivers. Let me show you here.
Yeah, just turn
There are
it.
12 of them.
Wow.
And they're about an inch and a third, or they're less than an inch and a half, the cones themselves. And they were on sale at Radio Shack many years ago. I think I paid $1 a piece for them. And anyway, I demonstrated these for the other group. And I remember that, what's his name? Mike Levine was there. And he says, you know, Terry, he said, I don't know if these are better than my speakers, but they cost 1/2000th of mine. He had paid about 80,000 for his speakers. And he thought
How do you drive them?
give a good run for the money. And they actually do. They're not bad at all. But it's a focused array. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is concave.
Right.
And it's focused to a point about 9 feet. And the reason for that is I'm sit back in my room 8 feet. And I wanted the focus area to be about that high to make sure that my ear is in there somehow. And they actually work very good. Now, one thing I didn't know until I took these to Canada was that if you sit further back, it seems to be just fine. I thought, they all go down to a point, but beyond that, evidently they kind of straighten out and go straight back. So anywhere behind you is actually not too bad either, which was totally unintended, and I had not anticipated that at all. However, I had these tested by Dan Wiggins at one point, and then Dave Rosgard has also done them. But Dan said that he thought that these things were plus or minus about 1.5 decimals from about 350, 400, I guess, up to 20,000 or around there. So they're very linear. They can go fairly loud. Now I'm kind of worried because you can't get these drivers anymore. They're long gone.
And you didn't buy any extras, did you?
I bought 20 extras.
Oh, okay.
But I don't want to, I don't want to have to use them if I don't have
Right.
to.
Oh,
But
sure.
anyway, so anyway, I ended up This isn't all of it anymore. There's a 8-inch driver that supplies the bass. And it's tuned in such a manner that you get about, I think, -3 down around, I think it's about 25, 26 hertz is your 3 dB point down.
Hey, Terry, do you want to know a funny story about this? Because I was working in professional audio, and in the 90s, the line array made a big hit.
Yeah.
The line array or constant bandwidth transducers were not developed for audio. They were developed by they were not developed for audio applications. They were developed by the Navy for underwater radar detection of Russian submarines.
Yeah.
And they made all the studies. There is a guy pretty old now, D.B. Kiel, who wrote a lot of papers, but this was only known after the 80s when the Navy disclosed the papers, because it was secret before that. So after the 80s, all the theory about the line array was for public use. And so you can see in the big PA system for concerts and stadiums that all the advantage of the line array that has a wide horizontal dispersion and very controlled vertical dispersion. And if you drive individually the speakers, or you put some padding and frequency shifting, you can steer where you focus the sound.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with a line array.
Yeah. Yeah, a line array works real well if your baffle has the drivers next to it. Now, actually, it would be nice if you had some sort of a electrostatic driver, probably. But if it's from the floor to the ceiling, then you get a cylindrical waveform.
Yep.
However, if it's shorter than the ceiling, that starts disrupting. You end up at the top or the bottom or both, depending on how short the linear length is of the driver, and you start getting distortion. So you lose, you can lose a lot on those line arrays if they don't reach from the ceiling to the floor. This is directed, of course, to 1 point space. So it converges right at about 9 feet in setup. And
interesting.
I know because I tested it myself using a tape measure and string and a compass, of course, and it really works.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, Mike Levine thought that these were as good as his $80,000 speakers. He thought he was pretty impressed. So,
well, there is a difference between cost and value.
Well, that is true. That is true. I wish they still had these little, well, I call them 2 inches. They're not 1.5 inches, basically, but they don't. They sound good though. They're excellent driver.
And having so many speakers, also the excursion of each one is very low, so you also get the benefit of very low distortion.
Yeah.
In addition to the control dispersion that you have with the array.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Has anybody here heard these? I think Dave has.
Yeah.
A couple of times. But what was your impression? I'll plug my ears.
Oh, they did sound very good when you were in the zone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you were in the focus area or just ahead of it.
That's right. If you stand up or you duck down, you lose everything.
Yeah, and
It's
it is a noticeable difference.
Array. And it's not something you use in a stadium, because there's only going to be just 1 or 2 people are really getting the effect, the full effect. Everybody else is out of the picture. So, yeah.
But
they're
those are
nice for a little room. Yeah.
Do they use arrays that are curved convex And then those can cover auditoriums pretty well.
I've heard that. I have no idea how they got that to work.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that. And, I started reading it. I just lost interest. I don't know. I guess it's me, but this does work. I don't see how the other one works, but everybody says it does. So,
Right.
more than one way to skin a cat, I guess.
I've seen some explanations online that were like on, pro audio type oriented sites that were, here's the basics, guys. This is what you can do with this kind of thing. And seemed to make sense. They explained what they were working against to begin with in terms of trying to cover people that are close, people that are far away, and the placement of the loudspeakers and everything. And it seemed to make sense. But
Well, I think
yeah, I mean,
that Don Keel designed one for the Dayton Audio or Parts Express, and his shape was convex and not concave like Terry's. And I think when I read about that one, if I remember right, he had to do some power shading in it to get everything.
Yeah, you have to shift a lot of stuff around. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
This one they don't.
It's using the floor as
Mine
a
doesn't.
it's using the floor as a reflector to make a mirror image of it. So you just see this thing arcing back, but acoustically it's making
it's just half of a
and then the thing
radius arc.
the thing that surprised me, I'd played with arrays a little bit. I had always found, I built that quarter sphere covered with drivers years ago, and I realized, boy, the high frequencies were really rolled off on that above a certain cutoff frequency based on the length of the thing and whatnot. And so the Keel was always talking about the dispersion being really wonderful. What they don't really tell you is that there is this high frequency attenuation with that array, which isn't a big deal, but you have to be ready to equalize it to boost that high end. Of course, you've got 45 drivers or whatever, so it doesn't matter. But that was kind of an interesting. There's always this interesting thing where I've never quite got my head around it. You think, oh, if I put these drivers in an arc, it rolls off at a higher frequencies, depending on the whatever the radius of that arc. And so, but I always thought in my mind, well, aren't I just producing, if you had a point source, it's going to put out a wave, right? And any point in that wave, it's going to be in an arc. So I thought, well, if I put drivers in an arc or in a sphere, shouldn't it still be a flat response? But it just isn't. And I haven't studied it enough to I mean, there's just cancellation from one part to the other, obviously. But
there is a solution, Dana. Sorry, I don't want to speak too much, but my first project in QSC before leaving the company was a line array of 16 speakers plus a 15 inches woofer. The 16 speakers were 2 inches. But for I was driving each speaker with the independent amplifier, and I have one channel of DSP for each speaker. So what you said is true. The problem with the LAN array is when you have two drivers that are far apart and they are emitting the same frequency, you have two different distance to reach a point, and there are cancellation. So there is a lot of calculations, and DB Keel is who provide all the theory, but suppose you can put the tweeter in the middle of the array. Nothing more than that. Then the driver that is below and above that, they have a complementary response and so on, and you can create an spheric front wave. Just doing shaping the frequency response of each one of the driver symmetrical regarding the center point, but not everybody is driving full range.
Right. Yeah.
That's a neat idea, although the focused array just erases all those problems.
Right.
And, you know, as you get higher, I think he's being about, I don't know, inch, we'll call it 1.5 inches. It's actually a little bit less. I figured about 9,000 hertz is when they started to beam. But they all beam to the same spot where you are. And so you really notice a difference. It looks pretty flat to me, so,
Yeah, that's right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you have to bring them to Renan's one of these days when we
Yeah,
get
bring that.
going again.
Let's listen to it. And also the KEF speakers,
Oh, yeah.
The what?
the little LS3s
Oh,
Yeah, we'd love to
Everybody
hear
being that one
samples.
there?
from
Yep.
the one that you made, Animal.
Okay,
Yeah, bring them
Okay,
sometime. We'd like to hear them also.
Oh,
okay.
That'd be great.
I'm not, now I'm involved in a new project of amplifier. If I can finish, it will be great. I'm doing a non-switching Class B amplifier that is supposed to have very low distortion. So far, it's only simulations and paper, but I'm going to assemble that because I think that your amplifiers are too powerful for the KEF, Renan.
Oh, we don't have to drive them, you know, to that degree, just to get an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if some of you share my passion for going to Goodwill or Craigslist looking for hidden treasure, but just talking that take advantage that today we are not too many and we can talk a lot more. I purchased an Atcon amplifier for $20
Wow.
in Craigslist because it was blowing the fuses, and I fixed it. It was just the power supply, a bridge, and I was highly disappointed because everything is fantastic, but as I mentioned before, the stereo image is flat. You cannot say that sounds bad, but it's lifeless. And it's all MOSFET, and it's a Nelson Pass design from the 90s. I think that is a GVA 5300. And well, it's back on the garage on storage. And the finding that I did also in Craigslist is a Sony amplifier from the ES series. It's a 333 that is incredibly heavy, has a ceramic chassis to avoid vibrations. And I also purchased for some dirty money because it lacks the balance that I couldn't replace because it's a special pot. But this Sony amplifier is beautiful. It's beautiful how creates the sound stage. That is what I'm focused right now.
What period did that come from? When 1990s or
early 90s? Yes. Is from it has wooden size like well, I have on my listening room now here. It's from the my CD player is a Sony X7 ES from the 1992. Is the one is interesting because the CD spins, but the laser is fixed. So the CD spins and moves over the laser. The laser is fixed, so it only needs to move up and down to focus. The laser is not moving across the disc like in most of the CD players, the conventional CD players. And I purchased few Sony things on Craigslist. I can talk because my wife is away from here. But the amplifier was dirty cheap, and also a DSP preamplifier from Sony from that age that I didn't use yet. But the amplifier was a surprise. And makes me think about the parameters that are not usually state when you see specs, or they are not usually measured. And what is behind this microphonism of, suppose if you open your amplifier and you tap on top of the components, you will get sound on the speakers. And there is people who said that while you are playing music and your amplifier is close to the speakers or in the same room, there is some micro generation of sounds that blurs the low level details. And I saw the schematic of this amplifier and I don't see nothing extraordinary, just really high quality parts. The only thing that is different from all the other things that I have around is that it has a plate, of ceramic plate, and all the boards, heads in transformer, everything is screwed to this ceramic plate that is very heavy and inert, no vibration. So I'm trying to listen and learn from these things a little bit besides the specs of the conventional specs of the audio.
And I think everyone is acquainted with the idea, but it seems to be more than anything is that the combination of the speaker and amplifier together.
Yep. There are some amplifiers that are not happy with some loads, and
yeah, and maybe even I mean, I don't know what the other technical cause and effect are, but there really are, you know, some amplifiers sound really good with some speakers. I was surprised with my big open baffles. Annabelle, could you see those in the, I guess maybe you couldn't see them in the background. I don't know if you saw them before there, but they have 18-inch woofers. You can kind of see it.
Yep.
And they really came to life in terms of kind of authority and crispness of presentation of the bass and everything with a Kenwood amplifier from, I don't know, I think it's from around 1990 or something like that, that has a fair amount of power and a high damping factor. And those, it's a passive crossover on those things, but I have humongous laminated core coil on the 18-inch woofer. It's like 20 millihenry coil, because I wanted it to roll off from, say, 40 or 50 hertz and start rolling down, because it has such a rising response being an open baffle. I want to do something to compensate for that. I wanted to do it passive. So anyway, it's got, you know, it's working against this big coil, and then it's you know, doesn't have a resistance of a box or anything like that. So something about this amplifier just really took a hold of that driver and just made the bass fairly precise and commanding. And whereas the, you know, tube amplifier doesn't sound all that great with it. Other aspects of it sound good, but it has a hard time, you know, controlling it. I mean, the bass is there, but it doesn't control it that well. So anyway, so that's my long-winded way of saying that there's, you know, some amplifiers are interact with some speakers better than others.
Yep.
Yeah. Part of the problem with that damping factor is that it over dampens on some configurations of drivers, and you don't get as much bass as you would otherwise. That fella up there that hung around Dave DeLugo's place up in Canada, I can never remember his name. Do you remember Dave, the young kid?
Oh, wow.
He lived
I mean, I know who you're talking about, Terry. The guy who's he's an expert at old Volvos also. Yeah,
that's him. So anyway, he rigged up a deal, where
Daniel.
it had a dial and you could dial in as much or as little damping that you wanted. And on my speakers, the curved arrays, the bass unit on those, the best bass was with no damping factor, 0. It was hard hitting, it was not flabby, and it was deeper. And, you know, I mean, I can only tell you what that particular setup did. Now, whether it worked that way on any other speakers in the world, I'm not sure, but it certainly did on those. So
I think that kid's name was Daniel.
Daniel, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a smart guy, very
Yeah.
smart.
Whiz kid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun knob to put on an amplifier. It's not difficult to do. I've done it on a few at my house. And well, yeah, the speakers I built a couple of years ago with I built those plate amps that had 3 channels or whatever of the
Yeah.
3886s. I ended up dialing those so they had no damping. But
When
yeah,
you turned them down, they didn't have any bass.
so I turned the these were for the tweeter and the mid-range and the lower mid-range. And so what you're doing is you're eliminating the you know, there's Q electrical and Q mechanical,
Yeah,
and then the total Q is the combination of the two, right?
yeah,
And so when you remove the damping factor on the amplifier, you've eliminated the Q electrical and you're just left with the mechanical Q of the woofer.
oh, okay.
And so yeah, so I mean, it's not so you'll end up with you know, you could end up with a rise in the bass response at the resonance due to that. But then you can compensate for that by putting more stuffing in and lowering the Q. And so that it lets you play around with things. But
Yeah, yeah.
So you transform the amplifier instead of a voltage source in a current source.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was really easy. You know, I put like a 1/10 of an ohm resistor
In series with the speaker.
in series with the ground connection of the speaker, and then just feed that back to the negative input. And because it's such a low impedance source for the feedback, you don't even have to remove the other feedback path.
Yeah, right.
And so you could put in a, you know, a 5K pot there between that 1K or that 0.1 or 0.2 ohm resistor and feedback input. And then by changing that, you have that damping factor. That's I think what Daniel was doing.
Quite interesting because the speaker, we have a problem. The speakers are designed to be driven by a voltage source. That's why the manufacturers, they design to have the flattest possible response when you drive with a constant voltage. But in fact, the speakers are linear with current because the magnetic force is proportional to the current through the coil that goes through the coil. So when you do that, the distortion drops a lot.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah.
And then you can just do a Linkwitz transform. So that everybody always says, oh, but the damping of the woofer goes out the window and we have all this trouble. And so it's easy to make a Linkwitz transform to produce whatever damping you want at the low end resonance of the woofer. And that worked perfectly.
It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting.
So when you have a digital crossover, you can solve those problems easily.
We can't afford them. Not everybody's rich.
Oh, well, that's a nice segue. So let's see here. So my son asked me, hey, Dad, all these kids are using this Raspberry Pi Pico. And and so I bought one for him. And then I decided, well, I better have one too. And so I bought a couple of these. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the Raspberry Pi, but we've been talking about them anyway. It's a little bigger board, and they're about $35 just for the bare board. So the Pico is a very reduced version of that. And so this board costs $4. And so it has a twin core, gosh, I don't know. Is it 30 something, 36 megahertz, M1 CPU anyway, but a very capable CPU on there. And then there's all sorts of support development systems out there, and you can easily, program things. And then the people have created all sorts of things. It fits into the Raspberry Pi universe of peripherals in a certain way. But so I just got started with that for $4. You can, Rodon and I did a DAC with a different board that was, similar
Cypress.
Cypress semiconductor board. So we could do a DAC using this board as well. And, you just start populating resistors and whatever you want to do. But yeah, so it'd be, so I'm going to start looking at what kind of projects I might want to do with this, but at $4 each, and quite a bit of CPU. Gosh, does it have 128K of flash on there? So yeah, you can do a lot with it.
Excellent. So I wanted to share something. I recently purchased this unit. I don't know. Why is it upside down?
It looks good to us.
Oh, it looks okay.
Yep.
All right. It's called the Stock Crimson Amplifier. It's reviewed in Absolute Sound, given a great review, but it's also been reviewed in British magazines as well. It's made by a company in New Jersey, and they kind of become so popular over the last year, they completely sold out of their units. They cost assembled, the two monoblocks, 150 watts per channel. They cost 1,200 for the pair. But if you were to DIY it, they give you a DIY version as well, where you can assemble the whole thing yourself. That costs you about between $700, around $700. Now, the thing about this Class D is it's different than all the other Class Ds. It doesn't use any off-the-shelf Class D modules, which you can buy, the famous ones, the Putzi or whatever, all the ones that have been Encore and so forth. This fellow has invented his own Class D, and he uses gallium nitride transistors. They run at a very high frequency, 800 kilohertz, almost 3 times faster than traditional Class D amplifiers. And they have super fast switching frequency, which leads to fewer switching artifacts in the output and hence lower total harmonic distortion. So these two units have actually been measured by our good friend,
Amir.
Yeah,
Huh?
weird.
Amir, and have very good distortion numbers, and says he really likes them too. So just on a whim, I decided to buy them to see what they would be like, because I'm sure if I could resell them in a heartbeat because they're quite popular. I was just curious to see, because this reviewer who reviewed it and other reviewers have also said that it not only is it lightweight and doesn't utilize a lot of power and so on, but it actually sounds really good. It sounds, in fact, this fellow ends up with the article saying, I know that Stock Crimson is supposed to be a pear, but to my mind, it is a peach of an amplifier, sweet and dynamic, at a delicious price point. To my ears, it sounds like a high definition Class A amplifier, and surely offers a glimpse into the future of Class D amplification. An absolute must audition.
Oh.
And these aren't the only guys. Everywhere I've read on this, and Siddharth has also been reading on this, has gotten very good reviews. So I was just very curious how this guy put this thing together. So when we get it, I'd love to have all of you listen to it and see what you think. Because for that price, it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And if you go to his website, it's Orchard Audio. Orchard Audio is his website. You can actually buy the kit there. So you can take a look at the pre-assembled Class D boards, amplifier boards. And then you could add your own power supply if you want, or you could use the one that he's designed or
Yeah.
that he uses. And then various manufacturers have offering chassis to go with it, so you can
Uh-huh.
either build your own, or you could just purchase one from them.
Do you purchase the assembled version, Renan?
I purchased the assembled version because I found that by the time it was, they had a sale on the assembled version from 1,500 to 1,200. So if I were to buy the kit and put it together and buy the chassis and all of that,
Will be more.
800, it wouldn't be more, but I mean, it would be getting close. So I thought,
Yeah.
well, let's just get this thing first
Yeah.
before.
Well,
launching
if it's
off on-
assembly, there is no need to measure them. But if
Right.
in some
You can
moments,
just have
this is for everybody. Someone wants to measure something. I
Yeah.
have a lab here at
Oh, you-
home, and I
okay.
have a audio precision measurement
Great.
system. So let me see
Excellent.
if I can. Let me see if this camera works or not. Again, can you see me?
I can see you, yeah.
Okay. Here is
Oh,
frozen.
hey, there he is.
Oh,
Wow.
I see. Okay, I see you. It's sort of frozen for a moment.
See my work.
Oh, yeah, there's your workbench. Yeah, wow. Okay,
I wish I had a workbench.
nice. So anyway, these are going to come in, these monoblocks will arrive in March, because that's how far back they're
Yeah.
back ordered. But it's all made in the US, the whole thing,
Oh, good.
and assembled in New Jersey. Anyway, yeah, so I thought that might be something interesting for the future too. If someone wanted to actually build one of these, would be, and if it sounded good, it'd be worthwhile building one of these.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to have your impression after comparing them with your regular
Oh
amplifier.
yeah, definitely.
Good.
Of course, we will. We will definitely be doing that. Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious about Class D, and and especially this particular design, why it sounds as good as it does. So I want to hear this for myself and see. And again, like I said, if it's not worth it, then it's very quick to sell. They don't last for a moment on eBay or elsewhere. US Audio Mart, some guy was saying it just went immediately. So
Does anybody in this group build an AVX comparator to do instantaneous switch between amplifiers or speakers or sources?
I created just I just use a double pull, double throw toggle switch and some speaker wire attached to it so I could switch back and forth between, when I'm listening to comparing speakers, but that's kind of the extent of it. Yeah, nothing fancy, but
Yeah, that will be interesting because now we are talking about different sounds. We are not talking about the specs because the specs relate very little to the perceived quality. We are all aware of that. And yeah, that was another idea that I have for a long time to do a really good AV, not AVX, just AV comparator, because if you switch speakers, you will also need to switch the gain on the path to match the
Exactly.
SPL.
Yep.
So I have an idea for a long time to do a switcher that could compare speakers, amplifiers, or sound source. And
Right.
yeah,
That'd be nice to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
right.
the club's preamp was selected to kind of enable that. I think it has individual gains on the different inputs. Was one of the things we were trying to accomplish, because people were like, "Oh, I want to listen to two components or whatever." But yeah, like you said, the mini DSP, because oftentimes I want to listen to different settings I've put in the digital crossover, has a remote control that will switch between 4 different filter banks.
Yeah.
But the downside is it takes like, I don't know, 2 seconds. And so
Yeah, that doesn't help.
it's kind of nice if you can just go click, 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 click.
Right,
But
right.
if you go, okay, here's some sound and then silence, and then here's some other sound, it makes it a little, anyway, it's good, but ideally it'd be very quick.
Yeah, I did something similar to what you had talked about, Dana. I made a little AV switch box.
Yep.
And the purpose of that for myself was to switch between my single-ended power amp for my speakers and my single-ended headphone amp. Because my headphone setup with the nice Sennheiser headphones is kind of like a reference for me. So I want to, if I can hear something really delicate in that, I use that as a basis to judge when I'm testing speakers or something like that.
Right, good idea.
So that little test box, it was a pain for me, but I got it together, and it's just a mechanical switch, but it works. It's a break before make, I guess, instead of the other
I'd like
option.
to have one, a switch box like that with a great big lever. And then when the lightning is going off outside, I can pull it down.
Yeah,
And then,
there you go.
the kite, Igor, raise the kite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
that'd be neat.
yeah.
Oh man.
I had go ahead, Dana.
Oh yeah, well, I was just going to mention, I said a couple things here. Annabelle was talking about making power amps, and so I managed to find this US. Oh my gosh, what is it? I'll share my screen and let's see, is that it? I think that's it. A place to buy Heatsink USA. So it was, I needed a heatsink, and this place was super easy to deal with. You just told them how much of it you wanted, and they just saw off this chunk of extrusion for you and send it to you in the mail.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, not too expensive, but just a nice idea that you can get it any length. They have a particular whatever the width of this sucker is. I can't remember, but maybe it's 10 inches.
Yep.
I can measure it. Oh,
What are you
the nice
planning
thing
to do
is-
with this heatsink?
So it's 10 inches, and then you can buy it. You buy it by the inch. So I bought 3 inches.
What are you planning to do with that, Dana?
Oh, I will show you. Let's see. The other picture, where was it? Is it here? This one. So the other guys have seen it. Oh, what's happening? Why am I not getting to where I want to? My screen sharing is, oh, okay. I
Annabelle,
shared the wrong screen. One moment, please.
You have multiple displays.
I
So
have a bunch of windows open, and 2 of them looked identical, so that confused me.
so Dana, wasn't this heatsink for the amplifier from England that you
Yes.
put together that we demoed at our last DIY meeting?
Yes. So I
I
thought I
miss
had
it.
this document open. Why don't I? Oh, that,
It's Douglas Self, right?
Yeah.
yeah. So this is
Okay.
this was what I was trying to show you. So this is
Okay.
the Douglas Self amplifier, and then his power supply board. But anyway, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can't quite see, but the heatsink is bolted to that.
Yeah.
That was what it was. And
Yeah.
but,
Behind me, there are all the books from Douglas Self.
yeah. Well, yeah. So it
This
sounds
is
like you're right in the thick of amplifier design. So you're that's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
I did my own boards, and I still have a bunch of them here. I did in Argentina in the 80s or 90s for the basic amplifier from Self, and I studied his circuits a lot. And
Yeah.
yeah. I only disagree with him that in a humble mode, saying that, please, that he denies that there are listening difference between equipment. He only trusts in what he can measure. And also in his books, he says, suppose this amplifier has 0.008% and this one 0.006. So this one is much better.
Much better, yeah.
Those are the only points where I disagree with him, but his books for me are a reference. Yeah, it's really, really
Yeah, I measured the one I built. That was one of the screens there with my humble equipment. So this is my sound card just looped back, input to output. Gosh, can I get, oh, there we go. So my sound card, it's getting below 0.01%. So that's the floor of the capability that I can measure. I can't measure any amplifier better than that, obviously. And then so I measured the amplifier, and so it came out. I didn't record the actual power level, but it was. I'm guessing it was probably running at about 10 watts here. And so the blue line is second harmonic. The whatever color that one is the third harmonic and fourth harmonic. You can see the little legend up there. I'm not my color distinguishing abilities are poor. But so the blue line, here's the second harmonic getting up just below 0.1%. Down at 1 kilohertz, it's about 0.02%, I guess. And so that was with it sitting here on this piece of plywood. And I think because I have my power wire making a big loop around the input section here, both of them. So that's going to contribute to the distortion. So this was one bias. You can adjust the bias on it. So this was like with a pot in the middle, I think. It had
pretty low bias.
5.4 millivolts across that one resistor. So then I upped it. So you can kind of go, oh, okay, this blue line is ending at 0.1. And then you go, let's increase the bias to 40 millivolts.
And you're using really nice sunken output transistors.
Yes. Yeah. And so now it's dropped that second order harmonic distortion down to whatever, that's 0.03. So it was, if I scroll back, you'll see that was up here close to 0.09, 0.08. So the bias is doing something to the second order, but the third order is remaining high. It's not moving much. So anyway, so when I get it in a proper box with the wires routed correctly so they're not feeding the power supply back into the input section, it'll be interesting to see. So anyway, that was my my couple things I wanted to show you guys. And what's the other thing?
Purchased the board from the transfer company, something like that.
Yes, the signal transfer company sells the boards. They no longer sell the kits, but they still sell the PCBs. But it was interesting. You can find, I sent the link to Howard, but you can find an amplifier board for sale on eBay where the schematic is almost exactly identical to this schematic. This is the load invariant, which has twice as many output devices, but the one that has, just 2 output devices. You can buy that board for $37, or what was it, Howard? Something like that. Assembled on eBay from China.
Yeah, it's just pretty unbelievable, really. It just can't.
It blows your mind.
So.
But the other thing I was going to show you guys just real quick, I bought one of these just recently. Just so if the power goes out, I researched a bunch of these things, and this looked like the best one. So it's 2 kilowatt hours of batteries, and then a 2 kilowatt inverter, and a high current charger. So it will charge in 2 hours if you plug it into an outlet. And then you could run, 2 kilowatt hours, you could run, your refrigerator for a couple of days. Or, you could plug a hairdryer in here and it'll run it no problem at all. It just doesn't care.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah. But, and then it also has inputs for solar panels. So it has the maximum power point tracking charger built into it. So it's just kind of a neat thing. I got it in case my in-laws lose power. I can drive it over there, set it in their living room, and they can plug their refrigerator in or whatever. Or if my, anyway, so kind of a nice little box. They have
That
smaller
would be,
ones.
that would actually be a pretty easy way to do power in a do-it-yourself RV. Like say if you took a Sprinter van like I've got or something like that, and you
Oh,
just
yeah.
you didn't want to have all the separate components and boards screwed to the wall and all the different switching and everything. Just plop one of those in there.
Yeah, and you can plug it into the 12 volt to charge it. You could plug in solar panels on the roof if you wanted, or just set them out. They sell little panels with stands. But yeah, it was kind of a neat deal. So
Yeah, and then you could just drag it in the house when it's
yeah,
when the power goes out.
right.
Well,
Okay. Just
I've got
one
something.
question. No, I was wondering because when you start showing that, I thought that you were using this for your audio system to provide isolation, but I was wondering if it's a sinusoidal output or a staircase.
Yeah, sine wave. Yeah, so
Sine wave. Oh, fantastic.
so you could use it to make nice pure power for your hi-fi if you want. It'll run it for days. And it will act as an uninterruptible power supply. So you could just leave it plugged in, plug whatever you want into it, and if the power went out, you wouldn't have to do anything, run your PC for,
offline and
hours,
yeah.
hours and hours and hours. So, but David or maybe Howard had a question. There you go.
Oh no, it wasn't a question. I was gonna change channels. Are you ready to change channels?
He's in the workshop now.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I'm missing the audio.
Howard, when you get off to the side, if you get over here, we can't hear you when you're over here. We can't hear you. We hear you just fine when you're in the middle.
Okay. All right. So I've dragged out. Well, actually, I dragged the speakers that I call the curvies. I think maybe it might have even been Dave that first came up with that name. I'm not sure, but made them in 2014, I think, something like that. And they've evolved a little bit. Dave designed a three-way crossover. And I finally got rid of the LE10 speaker, Dave. It just was lacking punch and definition and punch and definition basically. So I've been playing with the curvies here. But the main piece I switched was this driver, which I bought off of eBay, which is a Jbl Pro Driver with a huge Neo magnet on it. It's called a 2251J, I think. They're not super popular on the aftermarket. They're pretty cheap. I think they cost $400 plus each when they're new. But tons of definition from about 200 hertz up. It's a mid-range speaker. It's a 10-inch mid-range. And so that's what I've been playing with lately. I just wanted to show that. And what I'm thinking about doing with the mid-range and the tweeter is probably keeping the tweeter and putting a waveguide on it and setting it back in. And probably switching out the mid, that's a Fostex mid-range. It's a Fostex full range. Probably switching out that and putting one of those C's aerial mid-ranges that I bought on the clearance from Parts Express. I think they'll match the sound of the JBL pretty well. The Fostex is just a little thinner and lighter sounding. Yeah, but the one big change I made recently was I had designed it into the cabinet, but never really taken advantage of it. There's a baffle running down the center that changed it from being kind of a tall tower inside to being a transmission line shape. So now it's basically it's a mass loaded transmission line. And I've always had problems with this thing because the two big drivers are both sharing the same space because there's not a lot of space in there. But now I've got a driver that really doesn't, the 10-inch doesn't really want to respond much below 200 hertz. I mean, it rolls off. I think its resonance is like 60 or 70 hertz, but it really doesn't, it's not a bass speaker at all. It only has a couple millimeters of X max. And it basically made it into a mass loaded transmission line for the 14-inch driver, the big white driver. And it really made the bass a lot nicer. So feeling good about that. And I've been having fun listening to it. So just wanted to share those.
Cool. That's nice.
And still using Dave's crossover, mostly with a couple of modifications, but I'm going to need to kind of rebuild the crossover to really work with those highly efficient 10-inch JBL mid-range speakers. There's something like I don't know, like 98 dB sensitive or something. They're just super. They're actually horn drivers. They're made to go in big wooden horns. You know, maybe 16-inch deep horns, something like that, 24-inch. I'm not sure what, but they're heavy-duty sound reinforcement drivers. You know, probably used in multiple stacks to fill auditoriums. But they are super precise sounding, really articulated lower mid-range. Well, most of the mid-range really, but I am going to end up crossing them over somewhere between 500 and 1,000 hertz probably, and then have the 4-inch mid-range run through the 1,000, 2,000, through up to probably 3,500 or so hertz range. That part will be clear. So anyway, one other thing to share.
So go ahead, Dave. Right.
Oh, I was just going to say a couple of months ago, I took some little black speakers down there, bookshelf speakers, and a few of you got to listen to them. It was in process, and my stubborn design goal was to try to do a full series crossover on them. And as it turned out, I could never get them to meld right. The crossover was about 32 or 3,400. There was a breakup resonance on the midwoofer at about 4,500. There was another resonance in the tweeter at about 4,900. And another resonance, a big major resonance on the tweeter up at about 12,000 hertz.
Oh boy.
So by the time I was doing the series crossover and some notch filters in the circuits, I just couldn't get, there was too much going on in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. I just couldn't get it to balance right. So I set it aside and counted backwards from 100. And early part of December, am I on the screen or?
Yeah.
No, you are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I don't see myself on here. I see Terry.
Right.
But that's
Right.
okay. I'm not, it's okay. Anyway, oh yeah, now maybe you can see I've kind of resolved it.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
decided to go with a parallel crossover instead of series.
Oh, boo.
And-
You
But-
quit.
yeah.
Traitor.
So what it enabled me to do was I had to go to fourth order to do it, but I crossed it over lower at about 2,500 hertz.
Yeah.
You can see that on here, maybe. Is that readable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Not bad. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's got a pretty steep roll off on there.
it does.
And I was able to roll off the woofer. That 4,500 resonance on the woofer is down 20 or 25 dB, so that's good. I didn't have to add that eliminated one of the notch problems. And I put that left me with putting two notches on the tweeter, one at 4,900, a little narrow one, and then another one at 12,000. But they were spaced far enough apart, I was able to do that. Well, the only thing I had left was, there was just a tiny bit of resonance at 12,000. And as you can see on here, what I was able to do right up in here, I was able to put a 0.10 microfarad cap added on to the other cap I had up there. And it attenuated at 12,000, plus it also relieved some attenuation at about 17,000, which is, it gives that little bit of lift up in there in the air, the airy sound of the tweeter.
Yeah.
So I killed two birds with one stone inadvertently. It was a happy accident, but it cleaned it up. But I had to go through a few iterations on that one because I had 3 different types of capacitors with that value. So I ran some alligator clips out the port so I could change it out here. And as it turned out, this big humongous, this is a 0.10 microfarad. And it's one of those, it's a clarity cap. I think Gary Coe gave us some a few years ago.
Yeah.
Bunch.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Somebody brought him to the club.
Yeah, because I think I'm pretty too cheap to buy something for like that, for that small value. But of all the 3 different ones I had, this was definitely made the cleanest sound. They all measured the same, 0.10, but it really, I don't know, the reviews I read on it said this was more musical than other ones. Whatever, maybe that's right. But
what was the arrangement? What is the arrangement of that one you have? Where do you have it?
So let's see. You see the notch filter on the top, the up here. There's one.
Okay.
There's 2 notches on the tweeter.
Okay.
The one up here is at 12,000. So there's a 2.0 microfarad that I had in there originally, and I added that 0.1 in parallel to that, so it's 2.1 is what you see on my schematic.
Oh, okay.
And you can see what it did as a result was right here at the very top. It attenuated at 12K and then it let it rise back up again up here.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 microfarad by itself kind of made a smooth there, and it brought that down a little bit too much. So,
Okay, Dave, this
yeah.
response that you are showing us is the simulation or the actual measurement?
Yeah, this is a simulation, yes, but it corresponds to what I'm hearing. I haven't brought the measurement out yet.
Really, really nice, really flat.
Yeah, it's
smooth response.
And I got some good bass boost in there, and there's a little bit of a light smile in there. It sounds a lot better than it did a couple months ago.
Dave?
Yeah.
Are you using that software you wrote yourself, or
no, this is LSP CAD.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I had to go the dark side and do a parallel crossover. Just the designer's choice to try the series all the time. So,
you know, we have a real nice series crossover on this thing.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think almost everybody has heard that speaker now, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yes, at Renan's house. Yeah, we listened to that.
Yeah. So one of these days, I'm going to take it to the other club, I guess. I know we had something fixed up, then we had to change our plans here this last month. So I don't know when it's going to be, we'll be able to actually get together and actually have the speaker at the meeting, but it'll be for the other club, hopefully. Yeah, we'll see.
That'll work. It'll work out at some point.
Yeah.
Whenever the iron is hot, you can strike.
Yep.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't mean to be too long-winded on mine. I just thought some of you might have some interest in what I went through on that. My happy accident, that was really kind of a nice deal.
Oh,
So,
No,
That's
glad
neat.
you shared that.
Yeah, perfect. Wow.
I've got a question for Anibal. Anibal, earlier you mentioned, about measurements, and then even though there were two amplifiers that seemed to, measure well and so forth, one of them sounded lifeless and flat or dull, and the other one really brought things to life. How with your thoughts, what are your thoughts on why is it that we can't, are we lacking in measurement then to account for differences like this that we hear? Or is there something else that's happening? Or are we just imagining all of these differences?
Well, this is a very deep subject,
I
Renan,
know.
and it's true, and it's not something new. Even I think that we all know Norman Crowshurst, the one of the first writer on books of high end. He said that THD measurement means nothing. He said on the 40s or 50s. Uh, the, the point is that the standards measure what we can measure, but the big missing is the having a weighting at the end that is the human perception. Suppose two amplifiers has 1% distortion, THD. You say, okay, they have the same distortion. No, because if one has 1% of second harmonic, like a tube amplifier, will sound good. And if that same 1% is 7 or 5th harmonics, will sound horrible.
Well,
so this is regarding THD, but there are things that are not measured yet. It's hard to measure. Back in Argentina, I have another group of friends like this one where we met for listening to equipment. And like Nelson Paz says that he called first watt is because one critic of audio says the first watt is the most important. Some amplifiers, when you measure at full output, they has very little distortion, but when you measure at low level, the distortion is really bad. The crossover artifacts, in my impression, and I don't have data to ensure that, but my impression is that the low level distortion blurs all the image. The details that makes that you can keep you identify the sounds stable in the space. I don't have a clear answer for this, Renan, but it's true that we end listening to because actual measurements do not expose totally. Just this week, I was in contact with Brul and Kier and Audio Precision. I'm still pushing them to give us a measurement system that can use WAV files as a source for testing. This is not a standard yet, but my idea is that most of the difference that are between measuring and listening is because we are not measuring the devices in the way that we are using. So you never play a sine wave in your amplifiers. You play music, and the music has dynamics, has multiple frequencies at the same time. It's completely different than playing a sweep of tones to test. And the other thing is that when you are measuring the amplifiers, all the specs that you see online is with the non-inductive resistive load, 8 ohms or something very nice to the amplifier to drive. And this also does not expose problems that the amplifier may have. A speaker sends back as much current as it receives when it's acting as a generator. And the third and final thing is that our measurement is not weighting the results from a point of view of the human perception. You can detect easily 0.1% distortion at 1K, but at 50 hertz, 40 hertz, you need like 30-40% distortion to be able to detect that there is distortion. So we still don't have a weighting system for the distortion, neither for the alterations in frequency response, and also our sensitivity to distortion and flatness of frequency response are related to the SPL that you are listening to. If you are in 80, 85 dBs SPL and mid-range frequencies, you can detect a lot of details. But I would love to have some more precision with this, but I think, Renan, that you nailed the issue that is the perception.
Yeah, it's always been a tricky thing, because that's why I like to try to do both, because it just can't seem to have a single answer for one or the other. It's nothing like actually listening to the thing in the end. That's what you eventually wind up doing anyway. But it's hard to account for differences that you do hear, because when you look at the responses, they look the same. I mean, there's not much in the by way of plus or minus 3 dB, and both things look the same, but yet they don't sound the same. And it's a tricky one to sort of. I often wonder about that. We think we have the answers to measurements, but just like with quantum, with quantum analysis, quantum electronics at the micro level, things operate differently and weirdly that they might do at a macro level. And so we don't really always have the answers to everything clearly. And somehow that's always been a big question.
Well,
And I don't have an answer either, but I'm just curious about. I know this has been going on for years. People have battled about this and that and so on and so forth, and people have taken sides and so on. But yet, at the same time, when that happened in the world of physics, everything was turned upside down when they went to look at how atoms and particles behave. They don't behave like large objects at all.
Yeah.
The laws are completely different. And weird things happen that you didn't even think were possible. So I often wonder about that. Do we have all the answers? Do we have all the measurements already wrapped up for acoustics, frequency response, SPL, harmonic distortion? Is that it? That's it? Are we done?
Aristotle once said that the two basic questions we need to understand. Now, this is 300 BC, right? He says, what is gravity? Not what it does, but what is gravity and what is light? And it's taken a long time, and I don't think they have an answer yet. I think we understand kind of how they work, at least in certain conditions. But do we actually, you guys are probably up on this stuff, and I'm not. Do they actually know what it is on either one of those yet?
Well, I mean, it evolves, the laws, things change over time. They find out new things, new information about how things work, and they upend older theories upended with newer ones, and the newer ones get upended down the road a century later. So it's not that straightforward.
So they haven't solved it yet, huh?
Well, I mean, of course, the fundamental laws of physics and gravity and so on are all very well understood. It's just that things start to get a little bit weird now when you try to apply them to a black hole, for example, which they never even thought about, hundreds of years ago. And those laws start to break down. So you've got to start to think of why and how, and come up with different ideas, which is what they're working on now. I don't mean to get into this heavy subject. I'm just curious about audio, that we yeah, I'm neither a firm believer in just listening nor in measurement. For me, it's like that's not enough. I mean,
Exactly. That's the key word. It's
gotta
not
be
enough.
more to it than that.
Yeah.
Frequency response and distortion and so on is fine, but it's not enough. Somehow
Exactly.
you've got to listen. Why is it that two drivers, you buy a Fostex driver or whatever, something on eBay you buy, and then you do your best to flatten the response and listen. But yet, if you get a different driver made of different material and you flatten its response, the two sound different still.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's like, I mean, even to acoustic instruments that are, pretty similar, like a violin or a viola,
mhm,
or, say a viola and a cello playing the same note, you're going to
right,
be able to pick out which one is which. The timbre is,
right.
really different. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's really intuitive why it's the case.
Yeah.
It's harder to analyze perhaps, but it's, I mean, just the fact that the body on the one instrument is so much bigger than the other, you just know it's going to do something different. It's going to mean something different to you. And it probably relates to how our senses evolved to understand the environment and to relate to it and to survive,
Mhm,
that we have those characteristics that we're able to understand from the sound of something, how big it is, because it might influence how big of a threat it is to us, for instance, just on a real basic level. But I think that's probably very much the case. I mean, like Hannibal was saying, he wants to have his speaker drivers be the same material, so they all have a similar sound signature, I think is what he was implying. And it totally makes sense. I tend to lean towards
It could make sense, yeah.
I tend to lean towards the paper cone ones, and that's partly timbre wise, and that's partly just because it's aesthetically, there's something about it I like. But and then also the other side of it is my crossover building is not theoretically that sophisticated, and tends to end up being fairly simple. And so if I get a lot of drivers that don't have a lot of breakup like the aluminum ones can have, then I can run them farther up without having to have as steep a crossover to make them work. So there's that kind of thing too. But but yeah, no, I mean, all the materials, they all have different sound signatures in terms of like speaker cones, and and so yeah, sound coming out. But it probably is there's definitely cause and effect that's causing all of it. It's just our ability to analyze it in all of its complexity is not that advanced, at least at this level.
I just want to add one comment because it's impossible to quantify, but is present in all of this, which is our perception is more than hearing, because involves the brain and there is detection. One thing that caught my attention even when I was a teenager, and then I discovered that it's called cocktail part effect. I am not sure if you are aware of that. If you are in a cocktail party, you're in a party, it's a lot of noise around you, but you focus your attention in the person that is front of you, and you are listening to him, and you don't miss a word. Everything is fine. I was a teenager and I went to record an active live of a friend that was singing on a club. So I listened to him perfectly. I put the microphone, my recorder, the recording was a mess. was all noise. And then I discovered that that when you focus your attention, you are able to pick up details and forget other things.
Yeah.
And for me, this is what is happening when you are listening.
Yeah.
Some of us are pretty sensitive to the distortion in mid-range, and you can maybe don't be so affected by bass extension or high frequencies. What makes you think that this is a really good equipment is because you appreciate the definition of the mirror. So
the brain
for
gets
me,
in the way.
yeah, the missing term in this equation is our human perception.
Right.
And we are all different. So that's why one person likes more one equipment than other. And
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we're fortunate Aristotle didn't have a stereo. It wouldn't have got anything done.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to start a whole thing. It was just what he
Great.
mentioned got me thinking.
You know,
Oh,
as you get older, your hearing changes, and I found that the longer I've been married, the harder it is for me to hear my wife speaking.
that's pretty common.
It goes both ways.
Thank you, Lord. It's a blessing, really.
All right, so
Oh, boy.
we'll cut
shouldn't
this
say
part out of the video. Okay. Oh my gosh.
anyways. All right.
Well, I guess we've got a couple hours. If anybody has anything else, or maybe we'll call it. But
Yeah.
Really nice meeting. Thank you very much, guys. I
Yeah,
really
thank you very
appreciate
much
these
for
meetings.
coming and
Yeah.
meeting with us again.
good fun.
Yeah.
One last thing, Mr. Olson, I heard you had called for me earlier. Do you want me to call you right after this meeting?
Oh,
I just called you for the heck of
yeah.
it.
Oh, there
okay.
you go.
Okay.
Different Olson.
Different
sorry.
Olson.
Okay, so
Excellent.
no
You
need to
can't have
call
too
you.
many
Okay.
Olsons in this
Nope.
world, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
But yeah, you can call me anytime as well. So yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. All right. Well,
All right.
hey,
Well,
All right.
Thanks,
thanks for
guys.
coming
Very
out,
good.
everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
See you soon.
See you.
You bet. All right.